How's everybody doing? Good? This is the project management tools talk. Just double check, make sure everybody's in the right place. Always good to do. We're going to go ahead and get things kicked off. So the focus of our talk today, what we're going to have a discussion about is make a couple assumptions. One, you're doing a couple projects on Drupal, or about to do some projects. You're looking at different guidance recommendations for ways you can run your project and really about project management tools to use. I always kind of use as a baseline reference the Basecamp type of tool for online project management. Say that folks, you may have had some experience working with Basecamp or a similar type tool, and you're looking at some other options, or maybe you haven't done one to date and you're looking at some options for that, for running that. So what we're going to focus on are understanding some of the key aspects of managing multiple projects and managing sort of organizational issues around multiple projects on this. We're going to try to provide a couple different points of view, both from a project management point of view, stakeholders, product owners, or product managers, if you want to think of it that way, and developers, team of developers. We're not going to do a big rundown on full-blown project management tools. If you really want to know the ins and outs of a bunch of project management tools, you can come talk to us. We've probably used about every one in the book between the two of us, and can do that, and happy to give you that. We'll try to give you a lot of experiences that we've used. We are going to be talking about a particular tool that we use ourselves and have a fair bit of experience with, the Redmine open source tool, and we're going to talk about that. And the key things we want you to learn are, different tools that are out there and how to approach this and what the needs are from an organization and project management standpoint for managing multiple projects. And also understanding that with doing Drupal projects and approaching them from an Agile development practices standpoint, some of the ways that some of the ways the tools help with that, and what to keep in mind around that, and why we think this is important, and what aspects of this are important. I'll just kind of make a note. Actually, some of these sessions have already happened, but we do have a number of other sessions that we're doing mostly today, and then that. So if you're looking for other sessions out there, we've got ones out there on mobile, debugging, different ones up there. We have one right after this on DevOps coming up. So who are we? We're both from Promet Source. As you can see, we're open source, Drupal, web and mobile apps. Distributed team. We're based out of Chicago, but folks are spread around in some other locations, including worldwide. And so some key things that I like to point out about kind of knowing this background. So there's a couple things that we do. One, we have along with custom development, we have a DevOps practice, and we have a 24/7 support practice that we run. So this gives us a little bit of a unique perspective in working with lots of different organizations about what they're doing with Drupal and what's going on with the type of projects that they're working with and the type of challenges that are out there. So we sometimes gather quite a bit of insight from lots of different types of companies and organizations and individuals who are working with Drupal. And we also have experience ourselves working both ourselves as a company and then also with organizations in distributed teams from that. So real quick, who we are. We're not the two people who were listed on giving this presentation. Actually, it was listed for two other folks, Andy and John. Johnny and I have stepped in. We've given this presentation several times before in various aspects of it, so we actually thought that we would step in and do stuff, and John couldn't be here today with some other scheduling conflicts on that. But I'm Jay. I'm the Director of Products at Promet, so I focus on really kind of product building work that we're doing with clients. So I do a lot of work with understanding organization strategy and approaches that they're doing and kind of what the life cycles are. I have some fair bit of experience before in IT management and also enterprise CMS, then converted over to open source. And I've done a lot of startup work, and that's where I really got into a lot of online project management tools, info, and a lot of Agile product development practices. Was many years ago doing that and leading product development teams there.
I'm Johnny Fox. I'm the Director of Development at ProMet. I have a team of developers report to me. I also lead the project management team as a senior project manager. I'm a certified Scrum Master. I have a background in other technologies besides Drupal, so I've worked extensively in iOS, .NET technologies, ASP pages, custom PHP, C#. Worked prior to coming to ProMet. I worked as a consultant. I worked for a number of startups, internet startups. So we really got exposure to a lot of different tools, methodologies, customers that you're working with, and Drupal kind of has its unique flavor of. We have a really agile kind of framework with a lot of speed and value that's delivered. Working and picking out tools to manage that is really central to what we do.
So really quickly, we do have some experience here in Iowa, kind of local. We do a lot of work with several universities, Grinnell College, done some work here, University of Iowa, and then University of Northern Iowa. So we reach out beyond our borders quite a bit, and I've worked quite a bit here in Iowa as well. So on to you guys. So real quick, how many people have been working with Drupal for a couple years now? Anybody going back to like versions 4 or 5? Shaolin Master from like the start? No? Okay, all right. I always want to know that one. Anybody new? First time? Okay, on that. And then how many people work, say, do consulting as a company or part of a company or as an individual on Drupal? And how many folks is part of like an organization, say the university or any other? Okay, great. Couple of questions. Developers? Designers? Project managers? Yeah. Organizational managers? Sysadmins? Anybody? All the above. Yes, that's the one I love. That's the best one. Any folks here with Agile practices have done Agile on a project before, either non-Drupal or Drupal? Some? Okay. On that, did it go okay? Did it work? Yeah. Would you do it again? All right. On that. And I'm assuming the rest then might be new to Agile on that? Yes? No? Okay. All right. So, and again, we're asking that because some of this is going to impact a little bit, as Johnny was saying, the way that you're typically working on Drupal projects these days, and kind of the marriage between a lot of the sort of Agile aspects of Drupal and then Agile aspects of projects. So information you need to manage. Here we go. It's a big list. If you are running projects or multiple projects, there is a lot of things you may need to do. And this is going to be, some of this changes a little bit, as said, maybe depending on what your role is and your involvement with that. Obviously, some roles between a project manager and a developer or an organizational manager may have some different things that you're looking at or focused on. But you can see here there's a ton of stuff. Everything from, time that it takes to do stuff down to, issues that are being tracked and how the team's collaborating and how a distributed team might be working together or multiple teams around that, how tasks and things are going to be estimated, how it's going to be shared. All kinds of things that you can see on this list, and this is just some of them, from reporting to tracking and that. So this is a key thing, is understanding there is a lot of information that goes into projects, especially if you're doing multiple projects over time, and if you're with an organization that is using Drupal for multiple projects and different types of projects. It's going to continue to add up. So we kind of look at it this way, is really kind of breaking some of that down into a couple key quadrants. And a couple areas here in terms of documentation that you need for a project. And one of the key things that I'll emphasize here is when you're looking at documentation for a project, a big part of that is not just documentation to get a project started, but a documentation to take a project, continue a project forward, and to bring new people onto that project over time. How many people have worked on a project where you have to onboard people over the time of that project? Several? Yeah. yeah, people change, or you got to add people into a project, or the person's not available who's coming onto the project at the start. So it's a big deal to kind of understand, what's the state of a project, how do you get onboarded into that. There's also just, management information in terms of, what's happening on the project and, whether you're tracking by time on that or various workflow areas on that. You also have your communication of just status and knowing what's going on in progress of that. And then there's also looking at, what are the requirements, whether you're managing those as in an agile sense of stories or requirements or use cases or however you want to call those, and then issues, and then obviously we deal in development, so you're also tracking, what's happening in the code. So these are all lots of different information that comes in here. So how do you know when you get into trouble on a project, or what are some things? That list is probably as long as the laundry list of challenges. We just picked a couple on these. One, how many times have you got into a project and you can't find what's going on with the project? Stuff spread out all over the place. Or somebody says, go look at these 5 different locations for information. And you're thinking to myself, I just need to know what's going on. I don't have time to go hunt it all down. Or how many have managed a project where everything is done in email? Documentation all passed back and forth with email. Requirements being sent to you via email. Yeah, it's fantastic. As I said, difficult to onboard into new projects. Not easy to get progress on those. A big thing that we kind of point out here, and Johnny, maybe you can comment on this as well, and why this is important, we talk about it later, is information for reviewing a project, or what we kind of call a retrospective.
Yeah, so, like, having all this, where this kind of came from was we were managing things in our own organization, and, in looking at our own efficiency and trying to get faster, as a manager, I don't want to know the specifics of everything going at the project. I want to be able to look at a dashboard of it and see what are the overall, kind of where is it, where did it finish up, and be able to look at that from just kind of one place to be able to go in and go. Because with Drupal projects, if you're managing several of them, your time is split out quite a bit. So being able to quickly access that is really important.
So I'm assuming nobody here has had any trouble with projects like this before, right? Totally clear sailing, yeah. So existing tools that are out there. So I'm going to run through a bunch of these pretty rapidly. You guys may be familiar with these. If you like them, feel free to shout out and cheer for your favorite or not on these. So as I said, kind of the reference point where a lot of people are used to kind of in projects is Basecamp. Very familiar, popular, user-friendly. Everybody kind of gets how to manage some stuff in Basecamp on that one, and it's been in wide use. You have bug tracking ones like Bugzilla. You have really old bug tracking ones like Mantis. Anybody use Mantis in here before? Yeah, you didn't want to admit that, did you? Here's another one. Semi-old school is Track. Anybody use Track to manage a project? Yeah, I still. We got one this past year where we pulled up the documentation. Client. Yeah, current client. It was in Track. Johnny and I were like, wow, that's been a while. But it's out there. Another good set of ones, Atlassian. These are kind of a whole product suite of ones. Atlassian is an Australian company. Really good set of tools that they use, integrated Jira.
We use those.
Yeah. And yeah, I've used them on multiple projects before on that. Assembla is another one. This is a SaaS one, Agile. They've really continued to do a lot of improvements. Really good stuff happening with them in terms of the way they integrate and provide a lot of hooks for source code integration with Git on those. Another one, Pivotal Tracker by a company named Pivotal Labs. They have really good. They're well known for their programming in terms of how they work in that, and have produced some pretty good tools. Another one, Trello, which is kind of a newer one that's been out there. Really kind of easy to use, UI friendly on that one. Mingle's an interesting one. This is by a company named ThoughtWorks, which has a lot of experience in Agile and kind of thought leaders in that area. It's an example one with sort of Cardwall in there. Harvest time tracking. I don't know if anybody's ever used that. Just really simple, intuitive. Yep, time tracking one on that. Some people are even like, if they're thinking about time and billing, maybe into online tools like, hey, we're doing our billing and invoicing in something like FreshBooks or QuickBooks. Anybody used OpenAtrium? Built on Drupal? Yep. So even in Drupal, we have our own versions of stuff to use that. And there've actually been a couple, I think other projects or modules, Storm comes to mind as one. I don't know where that's at currently in that, some other ones that are out there. Developer friendly, GitHub. How many people have used GitHub? Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I need to say anymore. Like, how many people use Google Docs? Yeah. Yeah. It's simple, easy to use. And there's like, I don't know, 100 more, easily. Many, many, many tools out there, many of these that are out there. Here's what we kind of saw with some of the problem here that you look at. One is we're not advertising or advocating any particular tool above one more than the other. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to give you examples of what we've seen, with our selection and what we've tried to do around that and where we continue to look at improving. The problem that we've really seen on a lot of them we set out on here is that you get a lot of these tools that are going to address sort of an individual problem really well. And I pick on a couple, maybe picking on something like Harvest, which I've worked with people on. Really, actually, very good at time tracking. Does provide some integration hooks to do some other things, but you're sort of then you may be in a position if you haven't done that or where you're splitting some of that up. There are some other ones out there which tend to really kind of work well in one or two of the things they do. I think the biggest thing is kind of that second one where you're saying, hey, I'm not running a single project. I'm running multiple projects. I've used a bunch of these tools before on product development where we're building, I have an internal development team, we're building internal products, and that's been great because we're communicating with each other. I'm the, maybe in the product owner roles as the product manager, and we're kind of all internal from that standpoint. Not necessarily working with end users in an organization or end clients or multiple end clients or multiple end users in a large distributed organization and running multiple projects. You suddenly have lots more people in the mix. You have multiple projects going on. You have multiple stakeholders. You have different ownership levels. One project you might be working on with, a department might have a really good person in kind of the product owner role, and another project you might be working on with somebody in a different department might not have that person. So again, you have different levels of people in the organization who need to interface, and then you're looking at, how that's going to work. Another thing that we really look at too is Drupal's development. You're writing code. There's code being built. You want that code to be in source code management in Git. We would like to see that integrated. So some of the things that we first found running into this is if you cannot integrate your source code control with your project management tool, you have a break in the chain of visibility about what's happening at some point in the project from that. And as we said, tools that lend themselves toward Agile practices we found to be better, or ones that can be flexible to meet Agile practices can be better on that. So quick intro on what we did. How many people are familiar with Redmine at all? Used it before on projects? Anybody currently use it on anything? Okay, yeah. So we went in and when we first went down this past several years ago and started looking at stuff, one lesson we looked at it was instead of going forward and picking project management tools to use and having this laundry list of requirements. You saw the laundry list of challenges. There's a whole pile of tools out there that are available to use. And it's easy to come at this and say, hey, I'm going to have 20, 30, 40 requirements on my must-have list for picking what tool I'm going to use to manage my projects on that. It's too many. And you got to get it slimmed down. You got to figure out the ones that are most important to you, and you got to figure out which ones trump other ones. So we looked at some from our standpoint. We wanted open source, partly who we are, what we do. On that, we wanted a certain level of security, again, kind of the vetted level of open source. We wanted flexibility in there and extensibility, again, with the open source. And again, roles and permissions for different users was a big deal for us on that. And we wanted, a decent amount of usability. Now, I will say this. There are a lot of tools that you've seen up there, and I would not stand and argue this at all, that look way better than Redmine looks out of the box. Even way better than what we've made Redmine
right.
on that. And we'll talk about some of those aspects. But what we found is we had to let a couple other things in our decision process and requirements trump some of the user interface and even some of the user experience piece of that, just because having something look really great was okay, but if it meant it restricted the organizations and clients that we were working with from actually having use of that tool and being, say they only had read-only access to the tool, they couldn't actually get in and work alongside us, that would be a problem. Like we would rather give them a, less pretty interface, but actually have them doing something than, something that looked nice, but they couldn't actually do anything in, and they couldn't participate in it. So we made some of those things, and then I said we kind of wanted that unrestricted view of that. So real quick, Redmine, open source project management, runs Ruby on Rails. It's a plugin style system, so it's got several, probably hundreds now of modules that are kind of built as plugins. There's actually many more of them on GitHub. I don't know how many active repos there are on GitHub. There's probably a couple thousand at this point. It's been around for a while. Lots of organizations have used it and have built pieces off it. It's even gotten its own fork out there. Sits at redmine.org. Sits out on GitHub on that. It's got a bunch of features. Multiple project support was a big one. We wanted an easy way to run multiple projects and for multiple different types of organizations at any given time. Role-based access, pretty flexible issue tracking, which is kind of at the heart, the tracker is kind of at the heart of how it works. Some standard features, Gantt charts and calendars. And, there's been, maybe those are kind of boring, but sometimes people want to see those. And they want to see something that, makes sense. And again, having sort of the plugins and that. Standard things for like feeds, notification, wikis, customization of it. Time tracking was a huge one because of, we run a business of consulting with lots of organizations and being able to track time at a detailed level, know how long it takes us to do things and whether we're getting better at those things or maybe getting worse at those things. And having that visibility be transparent with our clients and the organizations we work with was a big deal. And so, having that actually built right in and not having to offload that onto something else or integrate with something else was a big piece for us. And then other things, source code integration, as I said, was key. The multilingual, multiple kind of databases, LDAP, other things that kind of allow us to extend that across an organization. We're part of that. So here's some of the things that you can do kind of out of the box. Some of these are screens that of various versions of ours. They're not all up to date. I can tell one or two of these are versions behind, but this, creating a standard issue, lots of fields that you can have and adding people who can be notified and watch them. A standard issue list. You have got contextual menus that allow you to, change status and open and close tasks and issues on here. It said Gantt chart, ability to, chart this out. There's actually additional plugins on this that allow you to do dependencies between the tasks that show up there, for a Gantt chart and do this, set it over time, and also filtering and status off that. Workflows, so trackers are kind of, as I said, kind of the issue trackers are at the heart of this. Then you have different roles, and you can set actually different workflows across statuses for those. So similar kind of, if you're thinking of kind of from a Drupal standpoint as well, of being able to have this kind of role-based adjustment on that, role-based permissions that you can do. So, being able to allow certain roles to do certain things or not. And I'll talk about this a little bit later on as well. Source code, view and viewer and diff. We'll talk about that. I mean, getting maybe a little less important in use as we do more stuff kind of integrated with GitHub, but still was.
Well, I will say, like on source code, what is important is being able to tie that back to actual ticket issues so that we can see where in the code, and that's not only the tool you're using, but also coding practice, so that if someone's making a commit, they're tagging that with the issue they're working on, and then you have kind of you're able to tie those two. Like, here was the action. Here's my ticket, here's the code for it, and sometimes we're tracking merge issues. That's really handy for where was this feature at a given time, when was this last touched.
Yeah, and similar to other tools that are out there, putting keywords in the commit closes out or changes status of tasks and tickets in Redmine for that. I said time tracking the spent time, knowing how much time is doing, being able to log time on the tasks and issues that are in there, and then being able to do that. And then customization. So there's a way to customize trackers on this. There's a way to customize issue statuses. You create your own and add those, and there's a way to customize workflow. You can pretty much customize fields on about any type of object that's in there to a certain degree. And you can customize even further by building your own plugins. That'll do it. And on that, said source code integration. So we're a little Git, frankly, is all we care about.
Yeah, it will do
much,
material. It will do CVS,
Yeah.
SVN. There's some other plugins. I haven't used them because Git is what Drupal does, and
Yeah,
we do Drupal.
Yeah, I pretty much tell people, like, if you're doing Drupal, you're doing Git, and it'll make it a lot easier to see examples. User management, so we have lots of, being able to track and manage lots of users in here. And then you can customize kind of this idea of views or queries, where you can customize to get kind of report information back, or to get kind of views of information back that you want to see quickly. A lot of it is based around creating kind of customized views or queries of the issues or tickets, whatever you're calling those, or tasks, whatever you want to call those, and have that and get different views of those. And you can save those so that you can come back and just look at them again and do that. And a lot of the plugins kind of use that as well. So that's a quick rundown of that. We're going to talk now about sort of how we're using this from a sort of important things that we think are important about using a tool like Redmine for project and Agile management. So first off, just kind of Agile in general. Johnny, you want to kind of hit a few points on here?
So, like any tool is not going to make you Agile of itself, and if you're really committed to running waterfall, no tool is going to keep you from doing that if that's your choice. I don't know how many of you were in Todd's presentation this morning on consultancy Scrum, but a lot of really good points about adaptations for Drupal and running Scrum, what it is. But there's a document called the Agile Manifesto. This is borrowed from it. So, instead of thinking as a framework as Drupal or as Agile being just, that it's always got to be Scrum or it's extreme programming, what is Agile is getting things done. It's having agility. It's doing things fast, and it has some hallmarks to it. So one of the things in working with people to become Agile, I try to work with is, let's understand, we're iterative, we're going to evolve, we're going to collaborate, we're going to work in teams, and we're going to get started on now, and we're going to get working, and that is what Agile is, and you have to have a tool that lets you kind of work that way. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the slides. So this is a graphic for Scrum. Scrum kind of describes, I really like the basic elements of it, but what it has is you have iterations. So we're picking a unit of work that we're going to be doing at one time. We're not always committing to get it done. We're committing to work on it. It also has defined goals, which is this little part over here of Scrum artifacts. You have your backlog, which are your items. It has rituals about what we do within a work cycle. It also has defined roles, which is really important. So, you have a product owner, which is, they're representing the client. I think in Todd's example, sometimes someone in your own organization has to take that role on because sometimes the client, especially in Drupal, is not really able to fulfill that, or you're working on a timeline where they can't. But the Scrum Master, he's working with the team, and they work with the product owner, but you don't let the product owner talk directly with the team, so it gives you these structured ways to interact, because if you don't do this, what you wind up is you can take each one of those circles and just start drawing lines of interaction between every one, and pretty soon, you have just kind of chaos going on, which is what's happened on some teams I've been on.
So looking at, these elements, what we're trying to emphasize here is whatever tool you're using, and it's certainly something that we learned in using Redmine, is that, we had to, think about what we were doing on our Drupal projects from an Agile standpoint, and keep in mind that you have a certain types of activities and information that you're going to be doing, and you're going to be gathering those over time, and you're going to be, incrementally adding to those. And, a good example that I can think of is, I've definitely worked on projects in the past before where, all this requirements information or information that you need to know around the project is being shared around, basically passed around via email, if you will, in Word documents. Or, I've even been on projects, especially over in the Microsoft part of the world, where, we're like, hey, we'll just roll out a SharePoint site to manage everything and this, and everything ends up being in these documents that you're doing. Here's an Excel spreadsheet of this, and here's a Word document of that, and doing this. And the problem with that often becomes is that as you're trying to sort of move through these things in increments, it's hard to sort of iterate over those. You end up doing things like, well, I'm versioning this and I'm versioning that, and then who's got this version of the document, and what happens if somebody kind of takes it out of bounds and sends it via email and everything. And so one of the things that we really keep in mind thinking about it is, using, sort of lean tools, if you will, focuses you on keeping your sort of activities around the documentation lean as well. You want to do what, you want to capture the information and what you need at that time for that point in the project, but you're going to be adding to this later on. It's got to be easy to add to it. It can't be cumbersome for the team to keep things updated and to continue to add information to your project. So being able to move through and keep things like information related to backlog documents and what's happening over a sprint cycle and how you're planning around these, that needs to be an easy thing to do, not a cumbersome process. And we even, I think, now are down at the point where like a lot of our developers basically write any documentation in Markdown.
Right.
And we just have our, we have in Redmine, it accepts Markdown format for that, and that becomes really easy. So, I mean, like, I'm even doing that where I'm just using the Stack.io Markdown editor, writing documents.
I think we're actually doing project documentation. Google Docs has a Markdown editor, and the team's pretty much adapted to using that. That is this idea of keeping things lean and simple as opposed to sort of weighty, if you will, in doing that. And the other key thing there too I want to point out is with the roles on here, you have different people needing to get information on a project. So you can't pick a tool that's going to silo, say, all of your project information just for, say, the development team. That's great for the development team, but that doesn't really do anything for your stakeholders or other people who need to be involved in the project. And we're big believers in visibility. A project's going to run better, and especially multiple projects are going to run better for an organization if they continue to increase visibility. And especially, if you're starting out in your first project, you've got a learning curve. So hopefully by your second or third project that you're doing, you picked up that learning curve and you're able to take advantage of that visibility. With that, it's important to do that. Well, I will give one refinement on that. We may not have stated earlier. Is we are a distributed team, so we do have a team over in APAC. We do have a team on the West Coast, but not only that, we're often working with client teams. So, my developers, project managers are interacting with another team that's working on the same project at the same time. So, you've got to be really open about what everyone's working on to create. First of all, to respect what the other team's doing. Secondly, you don't want to be duplicating work or stepping on each other's toes. So having that tool that lets everybody get in, share, and see what's going on really facilitates, more velocity. This is my favorite particular plugin for Redmine, so organization of stories and sprints. We do organize our work into sprints, so this is a plugin for Redmine. It doesn't come with us out of the box. It's not as robust as some other tools, but I like it. It lets me do sprints. It lets me communicate to clients and other folks. We can agree on what we're working on for a particular sprint, and we can measure the progress on that from just a very visual way of this is what we're doing in the next sprint, this is what we're doing this sprint, where is it at? So if you've used Scrum, it does come with a storyboard or a wall where you can have the story. You can very quickly look and see what are the not only where is my story, but where are my subtasks for that story? Where are they? Are they, new, blocked? These are, if you read anything on Scrum workflow, these are standard what's going to go on your card wall.
Yep.
But it gives you a very visual way for, myself, but also the team to look and say, okay, I'm on this story. Where are all the tasks that, are going to finish this story out?
Then again, kind of emphasizing here, we really focus on, with the integration with Git, we use GitHub for Git repos, and, having that plugged in and that integration works well, and as Johnny was mentioning earlier, being able to tie commits back to tasks, to tickets, to issues, and see that is really key. If you start walking back through, not only did we get this done, but what did we actually do at this point and what happened at that. Another thing that we do is try to organize information for project information at a glance. Again, this gets a lot into onboarding in terms of information that's available. So there's one place where somebody new to the team can go in and can see at a high level information that is happening with that. One thing we wanted to talk about here is we also do other integrations. We use some other tools with Kanban boards to do this. And what we found here, and I think what you can talk about kind of the importance is why we do this and the different flows that happen.
And we really started out with, we're only going to use Redmine. That's the only tool we're going to use. We're really working that. And what we found is, Redmine's pretty good, but, I needed something else to kind of be able to look and see where are all the tasks, how are my resources loaded, where is that working in Kanban. Kanban, how many people are familiar with Kanban as a term? So Kanban is an Agile philosophy that is really all about tactical management. It has very little strategic. It's like, what are the things that are assigned today and what's their status? It's very helpful for support type tasks. So our support team uses a Kanban board, because they're doing DevOps, they're doing support. There's a call coming in, we got to resolve it right then. We also found that it really works for the rest of the team because we can also sort that by resource and kind of view, who on the team is loaded, which particular. We can also filter it by what type of resource they are, and kind of helps us to balance the workload, not only on a project basis, but just as an entire company basis.
And what we kind of saw here really as an example to kind of think about is that, if you're working with an organization where you're doing multiple projects on Drupal, they're probably not going to all go the same way. And as said, we differentiate some. We do more support type projects. Sometimes we do more, heavy custom development projects. Sometimes they will have some different flows to those. Being able to have a tool that supports several different kind of flows or views from an Agile standpoint, it isn't necessarily, prescribing you down one path of sort of Agile. Like, you're doing Scrum, you will always do Scrum. Every project will run this way. Here's, everything is set. Gives you a lot more flexibility. And I think what we found is a lot more realistic when you're doing multiple projects as part of a large organization, or doing multiple projects with lots of different companies and organizations.
So one of the other Scrum, or one of the other Agile rituals we do is we do retrospectives. Retrospectives are, we do those both on a sprint basis, and we do those at an end of project basis. This is a retrospective metric. This graph is not actually generated by Redmine. The data is generated by Redmine, and it's based on the trackers. So when you say the custom trackers that he was displaying earlier, one of the places this has really helped my team is when we started doing retrospectives, we didn't have a good measure of how much time we actually spent in meetings or how much time we spent in project management, systems administration. So, by having these metrics, they didn't really affect us overnight when we started doing it, but after we were doing several projects, you can look and say, like, wow, I never really thought that we spent, like 15% of our time in meetings. So it's made us much better at kind of setting that expectation and seeing where we are, seeing where we need to tune what we're doing as an organization.
And even, reviewing data like this helped us go back and adjust, how we track different activities as well. It's just another view of metrics and hours. And one thing I kind of point out here, I was had a chance at DrupalCorn this year to sit in on there was a birds of a feather all day for project management stuff, and there was some talk. We had some time talking about retrospectives, and one of the points I kind of had taken from that is, lots of people were like, well, let's, we need to start doing these, and, what are we going to get out of them and value? And I was like, look, having gone around and talked to lots of people around these, the importance is you want to start doing them so that you know how you're doing on projects, both during a project, as you say, kind of from a sprint perspective. Every time you do that, being able to do a demo and a retrospective at the end of every sprint from an Agile perspective, and also at the end of projects, and then take that information. Well, part of the thing is, if you're not doing those and you're not tracking any of this information, you don't have some of your valuable data to go back and review. So the key is, get it into your tool, start tracking some information, start pulling it out, start using that as part of your retrospectives, and start building up some of that historical information, that trend information. Then you get an idea of what may be happening there. So a couple of things that we do that I'll quickly run through from this perspective that we try to keep in mind are, what do we try to do here? And do we always succeed? Maybe not. But we do try to manage as much as possible in our project management tool in Redmine. In part, Redmine gives us a way to kind of set up hierarchically projects and organizations. So we run, maybe a organization and then many types of projects sit underneath that. So that sort of hierarchical structure allows us to see all kinds of different projects. And one thing that Redmine happens to be really good at is it'll give you roll-up views across any sort of project hierarchy. So, we can look at, project at the top level and it may roll up 10 things underneath it, and we can see all that rolled up information underneath that. We also use the templates that are in there. Lots of the other tools have somewhat templates or pieces on that. This Redmine's got some built-in capabilities, plus there's some additional plugin capabilities that allows us to prefab common information that we're going to use, so we can kind of standardize the information that's going to happen. Every sort of overview wiki and other information comes out standard every time, and people get used to doing that. It also helps speed up onboarding of people in the team, so that when a new project's created and they come in later on, they're seeing standard information about that. Really, as said, emphasize the access and the roles. Is it perfect? Not necessarily, but one of the things that I really like about it is that, and what I dislike about some of the tools that are out there is oftentimes you'll see tools out there and they'll be like, hey, you have, you're going to pay, especially on a SaaS tool, you're going to pay, X amount of money per user per month, and then you can have a bunch of free users. But the free users can only read the information. They can't do anything. Honestly, in a project, that's kind of a useless user at that point. Like, you want people in your project as users and on your team, whether they're stakeholders or whatever, being able to actually use the tools. If they can't use the tools for anything other than reading it, you might as well just ship them a report over email for all the good it's going to do. Like, you need to get them involved and actually being able to provide information and feedback to you in part of your tools. So we like the extensibility to give different roles out and have those users do that. We use to manage internal projects as well and manage to do products. The integration is aside. Again, we've integrated with some Kanban board tools, some other pieces as well. And then, from an organizational kind of business management perspective, there's a couple of things here as well. So you get a lot of reporting information out of here. Project activity reporting. What's going on project, how many hours were used on something. Project time reporting that can be done in terms of seeing, how much time it took, and you can roll these up over one and or multiple projects as well. So we can get a lot of reporting information. You can export that, pull it into a Google spreadsheet, right. If need be. That time tracking, again, we're able to do this and see time tracking and see resource tracking and how much time from all the way back in 2012, Johnny.
That's right. I was working there. I was working.
And, activity reporting. We're able to say, hey, let's look at all the stuff out there that has to do with support, and let's see, how much is in progress, what's going on those. Again, resource scheduling on days. Some of these are plugins that are in there. The key thing here that we really look at is this gives us a little bit more of kind of a 360 view across our organization, working with multiple organizations and working on multiple projects. So obviously from a business perspective, this helps us with, how much time we're spending and how much time we're burning and what people are spending their time on, and, impacts how we're working with that. We can, get at information that's in there, exporting information plus information that's available via the API in there. And it gives us a chance to consolidate as much information as possible. So yeah, we use some other tools in there. We've got information in Google Docs, very easy to share and collaborate with folks on Google Docs, but we'll link that information in there. That just becomes a linked piece of information that's in Redmine, or even if we have something in Google Docs, we may be linking back to information that's in Redmine. So we're trying to keep as much of it either online, in the tool, or at least linked or centered in the tool between other systems or tools that are out there. And as I said, we've continued to look at things like when we looked at things and said, hey, some of the workflows in here and some of the views of those aren't great. Let's add, Kanban boards from Kanbanery, for instance, in there and integrate that. So now, that gives us a view and another way to see information that's out of there for in that. So kind of looking at wrapping up here and what we want you guys to remember. One, we think an online project management tool is pretty key for Drupal projects. I would say it's an absolute must if you're a distributed team or you're running joint teams on anything. If you want to build in a continuous improvement fashion as well, it's an absolute must. You need to get information and pull information out of there. What we have found is having fewer tools is actually a little bit better, even if, maybe not everything is fantastic in Redmine compared to what some other tools do kind of in certain areas. It's really been good enough in stuff for us, and that's kind of outweighed having it in one place versus having 3 or 4 that you might have to kind of stitch together and move between or bounce between on those. So sort of that integrated suite, if you will, or a single tool that can do as much as possible, we found pretty effective from that. But you continue to look and see what improves out there and what happens from that. I think probably the number one thing is
pick something and work it. Just have everyone work it. Like Redmine definitely has some things I do not like. There are some other tools I think are more robust in each area, and for your organization, Redmine that may not be the tool. But I would really recommend going through, deciding what is strategic for your company, committing to it, having everyone work it. It just makes life so much easier for working with clients. It makes it easier for your internal team to pick up, to have that contextual information and be effective, and it helps you deliver projects, profitably and have happy customers.
And if you're, I think if you're looking at it, one of the things we've done 2-3 times now, I think, has actually helped organizations that we've worked with actually roll out. I think we've actually helped rolled out Redmine as an example.
We've installed it for several other organizations
people
we work with.
And again, it wasn't because, hey, we think Redmine's the greatest thing since sliced bread to deal with a problem. The issue that we were really trying to help them understand and solve is, if you were a large organization or a distributed organization running multiple projects on Drupal, you need to kind of get everybody on the same tool. It's almost the same way of saying, hey, you need to get everybody using Git. You need to get everybody kind of developing and following the same ways of using of building Drupal sites. You need people on the same type of project management tools so that you can share and more easily collaborate on information instead of running projects 10 different ways with 10 different tools across an organization. And that is it. So questions, thoughts, comments from that. Obviously, you can follow up with, talk with Johnny and I at any time after this. We live and breathe this stuff on a constant basis, and I'm happy to talk about it and take any questions.
No one, everyone's project goes perfect. It's like you've got if you have a better idea, I'm also really interested in any feedback that
has anybody used a particular tool that they've really loved or tried to advocate others in their organization to get on? Or no? Yeah, RallyDev. Yeah, they're a really good company. Build a good suite of tools for stuff. Yep.
Yeah, they were hosts. We just made our choice was more about we were open source, so we wanted something Rally be a really good choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
We wanted something. We have our own, so we've done some Ruby on Rails. We have some internal resources for doing that. So we knew that if we needed a feature that didn't exist, we could, build something for our own consumption, and that was really important to us.
When you have a client who doesn't want to use your tool, they think that Udemy is the best thing ever. How do you handle that or steer them back to your ticketing system?
Well, actually, it integrates with email.
Yeah, there is integration with email that happens, so you can submit and you can both get notifications and submissions of information in there.
But sometimes you can see a client that no, you need to actually log into the tool and submit your ticket there. Don't just email me, because when they see things come through email, they're always finding some way to get your email address.
Yeah.
The question is tinged with bitterness.
So, I would say a couple things there. One, culturally, what we try to do early on in projects is we do early on kind of concept training with people, and we'll look at kind of the roles and on that on the team. You're certainly going to be challenged depending on what people's roles are on a project team. There's certainly going to be, in any type of project that I've ever been on, there's always generally some stakeholder out there who's only ever going to function by email. to a certain degree. But people who you're really counting on and really need involvement in the project and need, interactive level of information, we work to get them up to speed on how to use that and how to interact with that. It doesn't mean they have to become masters of how to do everything in Redmine. We definitely want to encourage them to get in there. What we find is once we're able to kind of show them the visibility that they can see, that often helps, because then they stop sort of, oh, I don't have to email 10 times to ask where something is, and I can actually go in and hunt around and find more information on there. We make time information visible and share that openly on our projects as well. The organized work with encourage people to do that, and that's a big factor as well, is being able to kind of get that information. But yeah, it can be challenging if you have people.
You do have to have a little bit of that conversation, like, I'm going to be able to help you and respond to your tickets and get your information in quicker if we all use this system. It's going to be a lot better. And our clients do log into our system, and they do get assigned tickets and tasks. So so there's that conversation of like, hey, we need those images from your team. Did you get that ticket? Can you go in and update that and provide that for me, please? It's really hard not to use it, really.
Showing that bi-directional of like, I'm submitting tickets to you, but you're also sending to me, reinforces that
Right.
we're building a website together. I'm taking care of the system part, and you're taking care of the content design part, or whatever the roles may be, that you can't do it without them, and they can't do it without you.
Right. So that's a very agile, we're working to build this thing together. We have to, find a common ground. I've had the same challenge, but
yeah.
Give us a small glimpse of how Git works with Redmine. Does Redmine have GitHub capabilities? Is it a wrapper for Git? How do you handle your repository in-house?
As a developer, I use GitHub.
Yeah.
It's really fantastic for seeing merges and pull requests. The integration is really on a Git hook for Redmine, so it will pull down. It'll pull down the repository, and you can see the commits, and you can see what ticket it belongs to. So, when I'm wearing the project manager role, Redmine really gives me everything I need.
Is your repository in-house, or is it external?
We actually use GitHub for all of our Git hosting, and we just connect Redmine up to it, and we can see. You can use both; they're not exclusive.
Yeah, it's just giving a different view of the same repo. Yeah.
So are they public repositories?
No.
No.
It's the machine's key.
Yeah.
As a user goes in and uses it, it's fine. It's so there's a varying range of technical PMs on our team. So some folks are very development oriented. Other folks, we just want to see, I signed this ticket. Did that get committed? Where is that at? Can I see that? So you kind of have different consumers of that information. But being able to see it in Redmine, keeps me from having to go to GitHub. I usually go to GitHub if I'm actually doing code. But.
Any other questions, thoughts? And again, we're available afterward. Feel free to grab us and chat with us. Happy to do that. So, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we will post it online. You would like a copy of the presentation?